The 5 Therrien family members being here, and I want to thank the folks out on the West Coast too, because they've done a lot of work in getting the Therrien family genealogy put together, and it's been a lot of time and a lot of dedication, and especially want to thank our cousin Leonard, because he was really the one that got the ball rolling many years ago, and he's worked a lot of tireless hours doing this, and he's done a fabulous, tremendous job, and we especially want to thank him for doing that. What we're going to do today is we're going to talk a little bit about the history of the Therrien family, and the 5 siblings are here, and they're going to talk a little bit about their life, and we're going to talk a little bit about their parents, and the folks that we don't want to forget is we're going to talk a little bit and have some stories about the 4 siblings that have passed on. So I'd like to begin today's session just by giving all of the 3 sisters and 2 brothers that are here today a little bit of history, because I know that some of you have not gone on the Ancestry.com, which is actually the genealogy of any families anywhere that you can trace back. So it's very interesting, and it's a lot of this is interesting, and I'll point that out to you, because when the Therriens, your family goes back 413 years is how far back it's been traced back. It's quite incredible. And it actually traced back to the country of France. That's where it all started. And at that time, the Therrien name was spelled T-E-R-R-I-E-N instead of T-H-E-R. So somewhere along the line, the H came in there, and I'd like to kind of tell you at the time that it did come in. So hopefully none of you will find this boring, but I do need to reflect back here to my notes, because it's just way too much to even try to remember. So as far back as Leonard has gone back, was back to 1580. And I'm only doing the Therrien side of the family, which was your father and his father and father's father. Didn't do the wife's part, because it's just really, even though it's part of the heritage, it isn't part of the Therrien heritage. So as far back as Leonard is gone was to a man named Noel Therrien, and his name was spelled T-E-R-R-I-E-N. And Noel was born in 1580, and he passed away in 1620. And he was fled from a place called Notre Dame, La Rochelle, France. And I recall Leonard telling me one time that the name La Rochelle, he pulled from that name to actually name his daughter Rochelle. And that's where her name came from. It was the heritage of the Therrien family. Next after Noel, which would be his father, his name was Andre Therrien. He was born in 1611, and he passed away in 1661. And he was also from La Rochelle, France. Next in line after him was certainly Andre's father, and his name was Pierre Therrien. And he was from a place called Courtenay, Eure-et-Loire, France. So the first 3 are all from France. Pierre was born in 1640 and passed away in 1706. Next after him was his father, and he was called Barthélemy Therrien Sr. He was born in 1694 and passed away in 1744. He was from Saint-Jean, Île-Orleans in Quebec. So his father, who lived in France, the family moved to Quebec at that time, which was, you can guess, probably sometimes in the late 1600s, early 1700s is when the Therriens came from France to Quebec. His father was named Barthélemy Therrien Jr. He was born in 1724 He passed away in 1788. He was from a place called Saint-Jean-Ile in Quebec. His father was named Alexis Therrien Sr. He was born in 1774, passed away in 1829, and he was from a place called St. Charles, Valachassi, Quebec. After Alexis Therrien Sr., his father was Alexis Therrien Jr. He was born in 1805, passed away in 1883. He was from a place called Saint Nicolas, Les Chutes de la Chaudière, Quebec. And next in line after him was actually your great-grandfather, I believe, and his name was Maximum Therrien. He was born in 1832. There isn't much history on Maximum Therrien, aside from he was born in 1832. Your grandfather, who was the person that was in Laconia at the time of his passing, his name was Joseph Theophile. And Joseph Theophile was actually born in Quebec on April the 18th, 1869. His wife, which is ironic in the whole scheme of things, is that his wife's name, your grandfather and your grandmother, her maiden name was Marie Eugenie Alice Vachon. So we had the Therrien and Vachon connection, even though Vachon was not even in the picture at that time, not even close to being in the picture. Marie Eugene was born in Saint Patrice, Quebec on July 24th, 1872. Now, Marie Eugene Alice Vachon was married prior to marrying Joseph Theophile. She actually had 2 children with the person that she was married with prior to Joseph. I don't know if some of you recall the aunts and uncles that you had with both your father and your mother, but I'd like to bring them to life right now. On your mother's side, she had 3 sisters and 3 brothers. Her sister's name, which would be your aunt, was Rosanna, Gertrude, and Rita. Her 3 brothers' names were Joseph, Alvaran, and Tomine. And on your father's side was Henry, correct me, Mother, if I'm wrong with this, Cyril Eugene, Derbeny, and Phileas. And his sisters were Marie Alice Leone, Marie Melanie Eugenie, and Marie Angier. 2, there was a stepbrother and a stepsister. Their name was Marie Rose Anna Cody and Joseph Pierce Auguste Cody. So in all, I don't know whether or not you recall this, in all between your father and your mother, you had 15 aunts and uncles. And when you look at the family genealogy and trace back to Henry and Derbeny and Billy, the families just like go on forever. It's incredible how many maybe second cousins and third cousins and all of that are out there. So it's pretty amazing when you go back and look at all of the family history here. What is, before we actually get started with any of the interviews, is that I'd like to take time to kind of talk a little bit about and get some stories from the five of you about the three brothers and the one sister that gone off to another world. And the oldest one being, I'm amazed at the number of names she had.
She did.
I'm really amazed. The first one, which was my Aunt Teresa,
Yeah.
but her baptismal name was Marie Blanche Alice Teresa Therrien. That's
Yeah.
amazing.
Yeah.
She was the oldest of the 9 siblings.
Yeah.
She was born in March of 1925. And I'd like to name all 4 of them, and then I'd like to take a little bit of time, and the 5 of you can kind of reflect on the 4 of them and maybe have some stories, and we can talk about the stories. The next one was one of the brothers that were not with you for a very long time. He died in October of, he was actually born in October of 1927. And his name was Joseph Rosaire Ameningil Therrien. That's a tough one to say. That was a tough one to say.
Yeah.
And the next was Uncle Joe. We always knew him as Uncle Joe, but his name really, he was born in August of 1930, was Joseph Ulrich Ferdinand Therrien. And we always knew him as either Uncle Joe or Uncle Fern. And the next would be Joseph Louis Rainey Therrien. And he was born in March of 1932. As I looked down through the family genealogy, the one thing that really came to mind was that all the boys' names started with Joseph, and all of the girls' names started with Marie. And apparently that was the way it was back then.
Right.
So I wanted them really included in this this documentary that we were doing about the family's life, and I didn't want to exclude them in any manner or way. So with the 4 people that I just spoke about, I'd like to have just like maybe a little open conversation about things that you remembered about them, and funny things or sad things, or maybe a little bit about their lives and how it affected your lives and who they were and what they did. So anybody can kind of start. What I'd like to try and do, though, because the camera is rolling here, and it's difficult for the camera to kind of pick up when 2 or 3 people are talking. So if maybe just one of you could start, and then, like if Uncle Ray started, and then Uncle Bob can talk about things that he might remember about Uncle Rainey, maybe about Aunt Teresa, and your brother Rosaire, and then the girls can kind of go right down the line, and that way we can do it in such a way that when we make a CD out of this, that everybody can clearly understand what someone's saying. You got to talk a little bit loud, because sometimes this doesn't always pick up someone's voice, so you can, not that you have to scream, but try and talk clear anyway, so the camera can kind of understand what you're saying.